Hello everyone, greetings from PayTabs technical support team. In this series, you will learn how to integrate with PayTabs through our PT2 API endpoints. And here, we will walk you through the third integration type, which is the managed form. For the purpose of this series, we have created a very simple Laravel project to walk you through the integration process. But feel free to follow the steps in this series with your own project, whatever the programming language or the framework used to integrate with PayTabs. So, let's get started. In this video, we are going to learn more about one of our follow-up transaction, which is the void transaction. So, let's get started. The first thing you should know is that you can find the full documentation for this part inside PayTabs support portal under the article called the Managed Form APIs Integration Manual. Now, if we navigate it from the integration manual over here to step 7, which is manage transaction, we can see that step 7 is dedicated to manage your already existed transaction. So if you already had a transaction and you want to do a follow-up transaction like refund it, capture and void it, or maybe query it, this is the step that you want to check. And in this video, we are going to learn how we can void a transaction. Now, to capture a transaction or to void a transaction, these are a follow-up transaction that is done upon auth transaction only. Now, to know what is the auth transaction type, you can check our solution article, what is transaction type. And normally we used to use the sale transaction, which is in the case of sale transaction, the amount is deducted directly from the customer account to your account, you as a merchant account. As for the auth transaction type, in this case, the amount of a transaction is deducted from the cardholder bank account and remain held at the cardholder bank until you either capture it or void it. Now, in this video, we are going to learn how we can void it, which means release it back to the customer. Now, we navigated to this part over here. We will see the endpoint that we need to use, which is the normal payment request endpoint, and we can see over here the request payload that you need to use. It's a very normal request payload. We use our required parameter, the profile ID, the transaction type, which must be void, transaction class, which is normally ecom, a card ID, which you can use upon your choice, the card currency, the card amount. The card currency must be the same currency of the transaction that you want to void. As for the card amount, you will need to use an amount that at most equal to the amount of the transaction that you want to void it. So that means if you had a transaction of $100, so that means that you can only void 100 or less dollars. Now, finally, you will need to add, of course, after the card description, you will need to add the transaction reference that you have already done, the auth transaction that you want to void it. So simply we have implemented this over here, this request payload. As you can see, we have the same, we have the transaction type as void, we have passed the transaction reference from our front end over here. We are using a callback to receive the response of this transaction. So first, we will need to initiate a normal transaction. We will need to make a normal payment. You need to make sure that the transaction type is auth. So I'm going to initiate a normal payment over here. I'm going to pass out my card details. Now, once I check it out, suppose I have a successful transaction, its type is auth. Now I need to take this transaction reference. You can get it either from the return response, you can get it from the callback response over here. So I'm getting this transaction reference. As you can see, this is an auth transaction. Its amount is 100 and its currency is USD dollars. So I'm going to my front end over here. Actually, this is the capture. I will need to go to my void one. Now, as you can see here, I'm going to paste my transaction reference and I'm going to show the amount. My transaction was $100, so it needs to be 100 at most, or I can actually void a less amount. For this video, I'm going to void the whole amount, which is the 100. Now, as you can see over here, once I have voided the amount, it shows me how it is. That's an authentication. This means a successful transaction. Its type is void. You can see all its details over here. Now, we have learned how we can void a transaction and we can move to the next part.